question.
Oh, Socky, is something wrong? What's the matter?
I got a hole.
Oh no, how did that happen, Socky?
Well, I was running around outside without my shoe on,
Uh-oh.
and then I got a stitch in my side, and then when I went to rub it out, I stubbed my toe.
Oh no, that's how you got a hole?
Yeah.
Oh, let me see. Oh, I see it. Oh, I feel bad for you, but you know what?
What?
I don't think this bad time's gonna last.
Really?
Really, I think we can sew it up.
Oh, okay.
You know what? The
What?
sooner we sew it up, the smaller we can keep the problem, right?
Yeah,
So
that's
it won't
a
turn
good
into a big,
idea.
huge hole.
Yeah, I didn't
Right?
want it to get any bigger.
Okay, I'm gonna help sew you right up, okay? I'm gonna put some
Okay.
thread in here. How does that feel?
It kind of tickles.
Oh, I'm glad it didn't hurt you.
Yeah.
Oh, are you feeling better now?
Oh, so much better.
Oh.
Thank you, Dr. V.
You're welcome, Socky. See, we can keep all the little problems little.
Uh-huh.
In fact, do you know what we're going to talk to the boys and girls about today?
What?
It's a really big word called resiliency. Can you say resiliency?
Resiliency.
Do you know what that means?
It sounds like, I don't know. You're going to have to explain it.
Yeah, it's a big word. So it really just means bouncing back, kind of like you just did.
Oh, okay.
So you know how you had the hole and you were upset, but you let me help you and we sewed it up?
Yeah.
That's being very resilient, bouncing
Oh.
back when you have a problem.
Oh, gee.
And you know
That's
what's really cool about bouncing back?
What?
Every letter in the word bounce back stands for something to remind you, if you have a problem, to bounce back.
Oh,
Do
okay.
you know what the B in bounce stands for?
Well, this was a bad time, but we just made it go away. So bad times don't last? Is that
Exactly.
right?
Bad times don't last. That's what the B in bounce stands for.
Huh. Okay.
And to help the boys and girls remember it, I'm going to read them a funny short story
Oh, okay.
about a character that bounces back. And maybe you can listen and tell me how the character bounces back.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Because his bad time, it doesn't last.
Okay.
This is one of my favorite stories. Mr. Putter and Tabby paint the porch. Can you see the pictures?
Yeah, I can see.
Oh, good. Okay. The first chapter is called The Porch. It was springtime, and Mr. Putter and his fine cat Tabby were feeling very chipper. The birds sang, the sun shone, and the flowers bloomed. Mr. Putter and Tabby went out on the front porch with a book. "Let me read you a funny story," Mr. Putter said to Tabby. Tabby purred. She liked funny stories. She curled up beside Mr. Putter and waited and waited and waited. But Mr. Putter was not looking at the book. He was looking at a porch post. Said Mr. Putter. He picked up Tabby and looked more closely. He said again. Mr. Putter walked all around the porch looking and saying, Yeah, just like that. Finally he said, "Tabby, this porch needs some paint. First I'm going to paint the porch, then I will read you a story." Tabby purred. She loved Mr. Putter's plans, especially when they included her. She followed him to the basement, swishing her tail, happy it was spring. Chapter 2. Seat. Mr. Putter carried his painting things to the porch. He had a bucket of pink paint, a brush, and some rags. Suddenly, one of the rags got away. Tabby chased it across the porch and caught it. "Good cat," said Mr. Putter, patting her on the head. Tabby purred. She might be old, but she could still catch a wild rag when she had to. Mr. Putter dipped his brush into the bucket and began to paint. As he painted, he began to sing. He sang about paper roses and blue bonnets and coming around mountains. Tabby purred and purred. This was even better than a story. Mr. Putter didn't yodel when he read a story. All was going well when suddenly a squirrel showed up. The squirrel jumped into the freshly painted porch rail. "Shoo!" said Mr. Putter. The squirrel jumped onto another rail. Seat, said Mr. Putter. Then the squirrel ran across the front floor of the porch. Scram, said Mr. Putter. And that's when Tabby remembered how good she was at chasing things. Yikes, yelled Mr. Putter. The squirrel ran, and Tabby ran, and before it was all over, Mr. Putter's porch just sort of painted itself. Oh my goodness. Very pink is the third chapter. The next day, Mr. Putter's porch was very pink. The walls were pink, the floor was pink, and even a few of the windows were pink. And Tabby was very pink. Mr. Putter's neighbor, Mrs. Teaberry, walked over with her good dog Zeke. Oh dear, she said, looking at Mr. Putter's porch. Zeke was sniffing Tabby's pink whiskers.
She's very pink.
Very pink. Mr. Putter sighed. I'd have to do it all over again, he said. Well, then we will help, said Mrs. Teaberry, rolling up her sleeves. So Mr. Putter went back to the basement. Tabby followed, swishing her pink tail. Soon Mr. Putter and Mrs. Teaberry were putting blue paint over pink, and all was going well until suddenly a chipmunk showed up. It jumped on the rail. It ran across the porch. And then Zeke remembered how good he was at chasing chipmunks. Ooh, this sounds like a bad day. Number 4, lovely yellow. The next day, Tabby and Zeke stayed inside Mrs. Berry's house while Mr. Putter painted his porch again. He covered up all the pink paw prints and all the blue paw prints and made the porch a lovely yellow.
Oh, okay.
When the porch was dry, Mrs. Teaberry arrived with Tabby and Zeke. Mr. Putter was happy to have Tabby back.
Oh.
He brought a book out on the porch and said that he would read everyone a funny story. But just as Mr. Putter was about to begin, a pink squirrel and a blue chipmunk walked by. And Mr. Putter and Mrs. Teaberry laughed so hard they didn't even need a funny story. The end.
Aw, that's a great story, Dr. V.
Do you like that story?
I sure do.
So maybe you can tell me how the character in the story, Mr. Putter, didn't have the bad time last.
Well, because he was starting out trying to paint his porch, and then things kept going wrong,
Yes.
and then he figured out how to solve the problem.
He did. All right.
Yeah.
By putting the animals inside, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he painted it a whole different color.
Yeah.
And you know what was kind of cool about this story?
What?
He laughed at himself in the end,
Yeah.
right? So like how you made a hole in your sock,
Yeah.
you could kind of laugh about it now, right? Because you're all sewed up and everything's fixed.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Bad times don't last. That's the beginning of bounce back. Bad times won't last.
That's right, Dr. V.
All right. So on Monday morning, usually when I meet with the children at school, we have weekend wrap, and we kind of talk about what went well on our weekend and maybe what didn't go so well and how we handled it, and maybe we bounced back. So if anyone has a story to tell me about their weekend, I'm looking forward to hearing it tomorrow on Monday when I meet with you. Bye-bye, boys and girls.
Bye.